right. This just really grinds my gears. This is technically my very first video I'm going to ever publish to YouTube. And it's going to be kind of a negative one, but I don't care. I really need to get this off my chest because this article has had me fuming. But let's get this over with. I'm going to get my disgust thing out of the way. From Japan to the world, how to translate a game. Oh, God. Behind the global success of Japanese video games lies a delicate task, appealing to overseas players whose expectations on issues such as sexism are increasingly influencing the content of major titles. With the majority of sales for big games now outside Japan, everything from slang words to characters' costumes must be carefully considered for a global audience. No, they don't. They absolutely do not. The whole reason that Japanese games got popular outside of Japan is because they're not Western. It's because they are Japanese and they have the cultural DNA of the Japanese infused inside of them. And it's 100% unfiltered, pure Japanese culture. You see, the Western gamer sphere, we, over time, especially over the last several years, have grown to hate the disgusting practices, ideals, and direction that Western game devs are going, which is why we have flocked to games outside the West over the last several years. Okay? You're popular outside of Japan because you are Japanese and not Western. Okay? And if you Westernize your studios, you're just going to get blended in with all the sludge that the Western development scene has been producing. Jesus. It's a complex process that has come a long way since the Wild West of the 1980s and 90s. Yeah, back when it was the best. The Wild West was the best. And we didn't have a bunch of gatekeepers and cultural sensitivity experts, which translates into a bunch of woke leftist idiots. Gets absolutely socially inept weirdos infiltrating everything to control everything and to prevent anything outside of their warped view of reality from reaching the general public. Okay? According to one high-profile, quote-unquote, localization team. Yeah, localization teams need to be fired. Gone. All of them. They're parasites. And they have no reason to exist except to censor you and to just completely sanitize your creative vision. To just homogenize you into the slop of development that's coming out of the West. That's the only reason they exist. I mean, of course it is. Think of it. If you had a localizer team and they get a game that comes across their desk and they go, no, it's fine. Nothing wrong with it. And then you release it. You're like, okay, great. And then you do it again. No, it's fine. Go ahead and release it. You're going to start questioning real quick, why are we spending millions of dollars on this fucking localization team? They're not doing anything. Because they're incentivized to create problems to justify their own existence. The only thing they do is manifest problems that aren't there so that they can justify siphoning millions of dollars out of your companies and hurting the bottom line of your product sales as well. Even if it's a success, it's not as much of a success as a success that it could be by watering your shit down with Western garbage, with censorious Western quote-unquote sensitivities. And guess what? They're not the sensitivities of the West. Okay? They're the sensitivities of a small subset of social parasites and weirdos and leftist authoritarian Puritans who have weaseled their way across all of our institutions and are rotting them out from the inside. Okay? There were no rules, no industry standards, and the quality of localization could vary greatly from one title to the next, says the Sega of America team who worked on Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, the latest title, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, okay. Sure, fine. Back then, translators faced constraints, including too small text boxes, and sometimes game developers did the job themselves in less than perfect English. Okay, fine. It also meant that many games from the era, especially dialogue-heavy ones, never made it out of Japan. Yeah, true. Okay. Thankfully, the industry, and perhaps more importantly, consumers, nope, it's not the consumers. It is not the consumers. It is just the industry. It is the devs and the psycho game journals that everybody hates, not the gamers, not your customers, not the people who give you money for your product. Have changed a lot since those days, and we are now able to be more faithful to the cultural and emotional content of Japanese games than ever. Okay, that's actually not bad. That means that they're able to, they're positioning themselves to actually better express Japanese culture to outside of, to the greater world outside of Japan. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Making yourselves accessible outside of your country is a good thing on its face. Okay, no problem there. Localization is now integral to the design process with international gamers in mind from the start. No. You should not have international gamers in mind. Actually, you know what? I take that back. You should have the gamers in mind, but I don't think that's what you actually mean. I think what you mean is the gatekeepers, the elites, your compatriots in the West, your counterparts, the evil side of the two-face that is game development between East and West. That's what you're actually talking about. Internet, you're trying to kowtow to Western developers and journos who, guess what? They hate you. Look at Elden Ring. Do you remember Elden Ring? What happened with Elden Ring? The gamers loved it. The sales reflect that. But what happened with the devs and the journos? They went after it. You had a bunch of salty Western devs and journals bitching and moaning about how Elden Ring doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't kowtow to Western sensibilities. It's fucking hard. It's edge. It's raw. It's real. That's what it was. That's what it was. And guess what? The gamers said, fuck the Western devs, fuck the Western journals. We are going to reward you for giving something that we actually want. Not what Western devs think that we must have. Not that journals want to gatekeep gamers from having. You gave us what we wanted and we rewarded you for it. Look at Pal World. Pal World's like one of the biggest selling things ever. And it just said, no, we don't care about your sensibilities. We want to make a game that gamers want. It's literally like what they said. Like I said, we don't have a vision. We just want to make things that gamers want. Oh, what a concept. Who'd have thunk? Who'd have thunk? What an easy thing to do. Ugh, God. One key example is how Japanese game developers dress their heroines. Oh, fuck. Here we go. Here we go. As the Me Too movement changes mindsets, no. The Me Too movement has been resoundingly rejected by the general population and the consumer base. The only people who it's still in the mind of are the gatekeepers, the devs, the journos, all of the people who control the sphere, but not the customer base. Okay? Me Too is it's a Hollywood thing. It's a Hollywood bubble thing. It doesn't apply to the greater population. The whole population looked at that and saw Hollywood with this Me Too shit saying all these men are awful. It's like, well, yeah, because you're in Hollywood and Hollywood is surrounded by awful people. The rest of the country was like, well, yeah, we've always known that Hollywood is a cesspool of awful human beings. But then they think that applies to the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the world? No, it doesn't. It's fucking ridiculous. It says Frank Gentry, traditional Japanese name, senior localization manager at Japanese game giant Bandai Namco. We tell them that the cleavage is a bit too exposed or the skirt is a bit too short, he adds. You know what? fuck this guy. He has a useless job. He has a useless team. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. He is a burden on your creative freedom. He is an ideological commissar. That's what it is. You have installed a team of fucking commissars who enforce their weirdo culty ideals onto your product to sanitize them for an audience that doesn't want a sanitized product. This guy and his team are useless. Fire them now. The next time you need to tighten your belt just a little tiny bit, this guy and his team need to be at the top of your chopping block list. He is a worthless person. I said it before. All he does is create problems to justify his own existence. If he wasn't there, there wouldn't be any problems, and the gamers would reward you in kind. Okay? In fact, cleavage is a bit too exposed, or the skirt is a bit too scored. You know what your response to that to be? Your response would be, fuck you. We're going to increase her cup sizes by 2 letters. She's going to go from a D to a fucking F. And we're going to expose her cleavage a little bit more. And we're going to chop another inch off of her skirt. That's what we're going to do, because fuck you trying to culturally colonize our games. Before they weren't very flexible, but they've become more proactive on such subjects. They're cucking. You Japanese devs, you are being colonized by an imperial Western ideology. That's what's happening. And you're letting it happen. You're cucking to the West, and it disgusts me. And it disgusts the vast majority of gamers who are rejecting Western development in droves. More and more. How many games have come out in the last couple of years, really high-profile games that gamers in the West have outright rejected? Some of them to the point where they've forced the studio that made them to close. Saints Row was so woke and so rejected by gamers that have forced the closing of Volition Studios. Forspoken was branded as woke, and it was kryptonite. Despite the fact that some people say that that's actually not that horrible of a game, the branding of it being woke, which there were obvious elements of it being woke and being made for a quote-unquote modern audience, tainted that game to the point where it failed utterly and forced the closure of that studio. And guess what? It's about to happen again. There's a good chance that Rocksteady suffers the same fate because of the gamers have already proclaimed that they're rejecting the Suicide Squad, Sushi Squad. I'll just call it Sushi Squad game. Everybody's comparing it to the Avengers. They've completely forgotten about Gotham Knights, a game that came out in the middle of the Sushi Squad dev cycle by the same studio and did so poorly that it was abandoned after like the first 3 month later patch. Nobody even remembers that game exists anymore. That's how bad it was. And now they're coming out with Sushi Squad, which is basically Gotham Knights and Avengers 2.0. I guess 3.0. I don't know. Whatever the fuck. Like, that game is going to fail. Can you imagine if they bothered to make Harley Quinn sexy? I've been playing through the Arkham Knights games, the Arkham trilogy lately. Like, Arkham City, look at Catwoman, look at Ivy, look at Harley. They're hot as hell, and they're cool. And gamers love them. You know what they don't love? Fucking whatever the hell Harley Quinn they're giving us now. This live service dog shit. You see, gamers are rejecting things from the West. And meanwhile, what released this year? At the beginning of this year at least, is being absolutely dominated by high-profile Eastern games. Tekken 8, freaking the Final Fantasy Rebirth, Like a Dragon 8, and what else? There's a fourth one. It's leaving the top of my head. Grand Blue, you know? These games are going to do very, very well. And they're very, very Japanese. Okay? The gamers embrace them because they're Japanese and not Western. Oh, and by the way, another side tangent. The modern audience doesn't exist. The modern audience is just a code word for weirdo leftists on Twitter who don't buy video games. That's what that means. Okay? And the thing is, even if it was a real thing, you're immediately dating it because the current modern audience is yesterday's audience. It's the audience of the past. You're by placating to a very, very specific time frame. And even then, it's a small, tiny group of people within that small time frame. If that's who you're going to target, you will be forgotten. Your media will just be turned into relics immediately, and they will be forgotten about. Because timeless things is what people remember, people play, people want, people cherish, people have passion for, have fan bases for. Name a modern game that's made for the modern audience that was like on the level of Power World or Elden Ring or some of these other really huge Eastern developed games. Name them. That are like explicitly woke. You can't. Maybe Fortnite. Maybe Fortnite. But you get my point here. You get the trend. You might be able to find a few outliers, but you get the trend. Gamers in the West are rejecting Western game devs, and they're trying to find things outside of the West, and they're finding Japan as an outlet. If you allow yourselves to continue to be colonized by this shit, you're just going to become you're just going to get left behind. We'll go to South Korea. They're coming out with Stellar Blade, which is embracing sexy characters. And guess what? Gamers are already like, hell yeah, take my money. Insert Fry from Futurama meme. Okay? We want sexy. We want cool. And the thing is, we don't want just the ladies to be sexy, with sexy boobs and butts and sexy abs and sexy face, sexy hair. Like, we don't want that. We want the dudes to be hot too. We want our dudes to be like fucking golf tees, just, jacked, badass. That's what we want. Puckman. I'm going to skip this because that's just Puckman versus Fuckman. That's just whatever. No longer acceptable. Says fucking who? Who's the authority on this? Fuck you. No longer acceptable. Says what, the weirdo commissar that has weaseled their way into power positions in your companies? That you've somehow managed to fall for their bullshit? No, the gamers aren't saying that. The gatekeepers are. The people who are filtering and degrading the relationship between you and your customers. That's who says no longer acceptable. Not the gamers, not the customers. A better understanding of Japanese culture among players means that adaptations can be more subtle. The Yakuza series is now called Like a Dragon, closer to the original Japanese. True. LGBTQ caricatures and sexist cliches have also been axed. To your detriment. You know what you could do? You could just make fun of everybody. You want to be normalized? Then you need to learn to laugh at yourself like everybody else. How about that? How about instead of cucking and sanitizing, look at who are the most famous comedians? Who's the most famous comedian in the West? Dave Chappelle. Easily the most famous comedian out there. What does he do? He fucking makes fun of everybody. He doesn't sanitize himself. No, he opens the floodgates on everybody. And guess what happens? Look at his audience. Whenever you see a special of his, the audience, the camera will pan out to the audience. Look at his audience. Is it all black people? No, it's not. It's everybody. And they're all sitting side by side, laughing at and with each other. That's unifying. But when you put certain groups of people above ridicule, that's divisive. That's dividing. That's segregating. That's what that is. Many representations which were normal in Japan in the first Like a Dragon games are no longer acceptable today. Again, according to who? Says Masayoshi Yokoyama, the series executive producer. Bro, you are being brainwashed. You have these some localization team, some cultural sensitivity prick, some leftist commissar just worm-tonguing in you, and they're convincing you of shit that ain't true. We ask our teams in the United States and Europe to read the game script, and they tell us that they see things that wouldn't be acceptable in their country. Again, see, what if they said that, no, it's fine. No, everything, it's all fine. If they said that for like 2 or 3 games in a row, you'd say, well, what the hell do we need these people for? They're not doing anything, and you get rid of them. And they know that. They know that they're actually worthless. So what do? They create the problems. They manufacture problems, problematic things, things that aren't acceptable. They're not real. They're manufactured so that they can justify their own existence in your company, just leeching millions of dollars out of your bank accounts. Get rid of these damn people. Changes often focus on alcohol, politics, or religion. Ugh. Frogget adds, traditional Japanese name, while cultural relevance points also differ. When there are people dressed in black boots and big leather coats, in Europe that could bring to mind a Nazi uniform. Yeah, but it's not a Nazi uniform, right? If people misinterpret things, that's on them. And you tell them it's not a Nazi uniform. You can say that it looks like one, but it's not one. And if you choose to interpret it that way, that's on you. Why is that? Why are you censoring yourselves because people choose to misrepresent what you do? Why would you placate to dishonest people like that? Fuck them. Let them complain. Let them run to journal outlets and complain. Those journal outlets that everybody in the West fucking hates to the point where they're all cratering right now. Have you seen the media layoffs going on right now? They're insane. Hell, look at the layoffs in the games industry. We've already hit like 60% of the total layoffs from all of 2023 this year, and it's not even the end of January yet. Give me a break. With global release dates now the norm, these decisions must be made under tighter deadlines than before, and despite improved communication between developers and localization teams, challenges remain, especially when translating a game into a language other than English. Okay, efforts have been made to understand the needs of the English-speaking world. The needs. Our needs don't matter. Our wants matter. It's what we want. This is entertainment. This is luxury. But for German, which has longer sentences and other linguistic quirks, localization is sometimes seen as an extra difficulty by design teams. Fair enough. And I can't speak to German, and I know that German language can be tricky because of all the compound words that they have and stuff like that. I mean, fair enough. I don't think there's nothing inherently wrong with that sentiment. Even so, Frogget believes in his mission to create connections to Japanese culture and help Europeans discover its depth while respecting both the game and the player. Okay. I think that's it. I'm telling you, Japanese devs, you are being colonized. You are being culturally colonized by a weirdo, politically correct, Western imperial ideology. Figure it out before it's too late.